Promise me something, I said, holding Olivia's hands tightly on the porch of our small Texas house as the warm night air wrapped around us and laughter drifted through the open door behind us. She looked at me with confusion, tilting her head slightly. Why would you even say that? She asked. I rubbed the back of my neck awkwardly. I don't know, maybe I'm just nervous. Olivia squeezed my hands and smiled gently. Mason, you're going to Israel for a few months, not disappearing forever. I nodded slowly. Yeah, just a few months. She smiled wider. Exactly. And when you come back, we'll finally plan the wedding. I tried to smile back, but something in my chest felt tight as I studied her face, trying to memorize every detail. Hey, she said, nudging my arm. Don't look at me like that. Like what? I asked. Like you're saying goodbye forever. I'm not, I replied quickly, but before either of us could say anything else, the front door creaked open and my younger brother Daniel stepped out holding a soda can. There you two are, he said. Everyone inside thinks you ran off and got married already. Olivia laughed. Your brother started the emotional talk. Daniel leaned against the railing and looked at me. Man, tomorrow you're flying halfway across the world. At least pretend you're excited. I am excited, I said. He squinted at me. You look like someone just told you the Cowboys lost the Super Bowl. I'm fine, I replied. Olivia smiled at Daniel. He's just worried. Daniel shrugged. I'd be worried too if I were leaving my fiancée behind. Just then the door opened again and Tyler stepped outside carrying 2 beers. Well, look at this, he said with a grin. The emotional couple. Olivia rolled her eyes. Relax, Tyler. He handed me one of the bottles. For courage. I don't need courage, I said. You're deploying, he replied. Everyone needs courage before that. Daniel lifted his soda can. To Mason coming back alive. Tyler clinked his bottle against mine. And to Olivia surviving without him. Olivia crossed her arms with a playful smirk. I'll survive. Tyler laughed. Sure you will. I took a small sip of beer and looked at him. You're still checking in on the house while I'm gone, right? Of course, he said immediately. I'll stop by sometimes. Fix anything that breaks. Olivia raised an eyebrow. I can fix things too. Tyler grinned. Name one thing you fixed. The toaster. Daniel burst out laughing. You unplugged it and plugged it back in? Exactly, Olivia said proudly. Tyler chuckled and slapped my shoulder. Don't worry, man. She won't be alone. I'll keep an eye on things. I nodded slowly. I appreciate that. Daniel pointed at Tyler. Look at him acting responsible for once. Tyler shrugged casually. Someone has to. Olivia leaned her head against my shoulder and sighed. You're acting like you're leaving forever. It just feels strange, I admitted. Daniel looked at me seriously. Just come back home. I will, I promised. From inside the house, Olivia's mom Evelyn called out, Olivia, sweetheart, come help me with the cake. Olivia sighed dramatically. Duty calls. She kissed my cheek quickly. Don't disappear. I'll be right here, I said as she walked back inside, leaving the 3 of us standing under the porch light. Tyler took another drink. So, you nervous about Israel? A little, I admitted. That's normal, he said. Daniel crossed his arms. You'll be fine. Mason's always been the calm one. Tyler nodded and said, and remember, if Olivia ever needs anything, I've got her. I looked at him for a moment before nodding. I know. A few minutes later, Olivia returned holding something small in her hand. Mason, she said softly. What's that? I asked. She took my hand, opened my palm, and placed a silver dog tag necklace inside it. So you don't forget who's waiting for you, she whispered. I let out a quiet laugh. Like that's possible. Wear it, she said. I will. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms tightly around me, resting her head against my chest. Just come home safe, she whispered. I will, I promised. A few hours later, I was sitting inside a military transport plane staring out the small window while the runway lights stretched across the dark Texas night. A soldier dropped into the seat beside me and held out his hand. Marcus Hill, he said. First deployment? Yeah, I replied, shaking his hand. Mason Carter. He nodded toward my clenched fist. You holding something important? I opened my hand and showed him the silver dog tag. My fiancée gave it to me. Marcus smiled slightly. That's a good reason to come back. The engines roared louder as the plane began moving and the lights of Texas slowly started disappearing beneath us. You too close? Marcus asked. The closest, I said quietly. Then relax, he replied. If it's real, distance won't break it. I leaned back in the seat and looked at the dog tag again, running my thumb over the cool metal. She's waiting for me, I whispered as the plane lifted into the sky and the ground vanished beneath the clouds. But as the city lights faded away into darkness, a strange feeling settled deep in my chest. Not fear of war, but something else. Something I couldn't explain. The desert air outside the communications tent felt dry and sharp, but most of my days passed inside where the steady buzz of radios and the glow of screens never seemed to stop. Deployment in Israel had a strange rhythm. Intense when alarms rang, but oddly quiet between missions. I sat in a metal chair adjusting my headset while static hummed through the room. Marcus Hill dropped into the seat beside me and stretched his arms with a groan. Man, he said dramatically, when Marcus Hill gets back home, Marcus Hill is eating a burger the size of a truck tire. I laughed and shook my head. That's the first thing Marcus Hill thinks about after deployment? Absolutely, Marcus Hill replied. Food. Real food. Not these sad rations. He nudged my shoulder and grinned. What about Mason Carter? What's the first thing Mason Carter does after getting home? My answer came instantly. Mason Carter is seeing Olivia Bennett. Marcus Hill smirked. That answer came fast. Of course it did. He leaned back in his chair and studied me for a second. Long-distance relationships during deployment are rough. I shrugged calmly. Olivia Bennett and Mason Carter are solid. Marcus Hill raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. Later that night I stepped outside the tent with my phone in my hand, the dark sky stretching endlessly over the base. Right on time the screen lit up and started ringing. Olivia Bennett. I answered immediately. Hey. Her voice came softly through the phone. Mason Carter. Olivia Bennett, Mrs. Mason Carter. I smiled without realizing it. Mason Carter misses Olivia Bennett too. She sighed quietly. The house feels empty. Everything reminds Olivia Bennett of Mason Carter. I leaned against the side of the tent. Daniel Carter still stopping by sometimes? Daniel Carter visited yesterday, Olivia Bennett replied. Daniel Carter tried fixing the kitchen light. I chuckled. That sounds dangerous. She laughed. Daniel Carter made things worse. Tyler Grant had to fix the mess. At the time the name barely registered in my mind. Well, I said casually, at least Tyler Grant knows how to fix things. Tyler Grant said the same thing, she replied. The call lasted almost an hour as Olivia Bennett told me about small things, groceries, neighbors, quiet evenings in our house, simple details that somehow made the desert feel less distant. Before hanging up she whispered, just come home safe. I will, I promised. For the next few weeks those calls became my routine. Every night my phone rang, and every night Olivia Bennett's voice made the empty desert feel a little less lonely. One evening Marcus Hill walked into the tent and caught me smiling down at my phone. He smirked immediately. That smile means Olivia Bennett is calling. Correct, I replied. Marcus Hill laughed. Marcus Hill should start charging rent for sitting near all this romance. Marcus Hill is jealous, I teased. He leaned against the table dramatically. Marcus Hill is just waiting for that giant burger. I shook my head and answered the phone again. But slowly something began to change. The call started getting shorter. One night Olivia Bennett sounded distant. Olivia Bennett is tired tonight, she said quietly. Everything okay? I asked. Just busy. Busy with what? Work mostly. I hesitated before replying, all right, rest. The call ended after barely 10 minutes. Marcus Hill glanced at me. That was quick. Olivia Bennett is just tired, I said. The next night my phone didn't ring at all. I stared at the screen for a long time before finally sending a message. Miss Olivia Bennett. No reply came. Hours passed. Marcus Hill looked over from the other chair. Something wrong back home? Nothing, I said quickly. Olivia Bennett is probably busy. Marcus Hill didn't press further. The following evening Olivia Bennett finally called. Sorry, she said quickly, almost rushed. Work has been crazy. That's fine, I replied. Mason Carter understands. The call only lasted a few minutes again before it ended. After I hung up, Marcus Hill studied my face carefully. Everything good? Yeah, I said. Marcus Hill crossed his arms. Marcus Hill has seen that face before. What face? The worried face. I forced a small shrug. There's nothing to worry about. Marcus Hill lifted his hands. All right. Days continued passing like that. Sometimes Olivia Bennett replied to messages. Sometimes she didn't. One night I sat alone outside the tent staring down at my silent phone again. No calls. No messages. Just silence. Marcus Hill stepped outside and sat beside me. Something wrong back home? He asked quietly. I shrugged. Olivia Bennett is just busy. Marcus Hill studied my face for a moment but didn't argue. Marcus Hill hopes so, he said. Later that night I lay in my bunk staring up at the ceiling while sleep refused to come. The quiet inside the barracks felt louder than any battlefield. Slowly I reached into my pocket and pulled out the silver dog tag necklace Olivia Bennett had given me before I left. The metal felt cold against my fingers. Her voice echoed clearly in my memory. So Mason Carter doesn't forget who's waiting. I stared at the necklace for a long time in the darkness before whispering softly into the empty room, Olivia Bennett is still waiting for Mason Carter, right? 3 months into deployment, the night felt quieter than usual. I was sitting outside the communications tent staring down at my phone while slowly rolling the silver dog tag between my fingers when the screen suddenly buzzed. Daniel. I answered immediately. Hey Daniel. Everything all right? For a moment Daniel didn't respond. Daniel? I said again. His voice finally came through the phone but it sounded tight and uneasy. Mason. Daniel needs to tell Mason something. My stomach tightened slightly. What's going on? Silence filled the line for several seconds before Daniel muttered, Mason might not like what Daniel says. I exhaled slowly. Just say it. Daniel took a breath. Daniel saw Olivia Bennett tonight. I frowned. Okay. Daniel continued quietly, Olivia Bennett wasn't alone. My grip on the phone tightened. Who was with Olivia Bennett? Another pause followed before Daniel said a name that made my chest stiffen. Tyler Grant. I let out a short laugh trying to brush it off. Yeah, that makes sense. Tyler Grant checks on the house sometimes. But Daniel didn't laugh with me. Daniel? I said slowly. Daniel's voice lowered. Mason. Tyler Grant wasn't just visiting. Something in my chest tightened instantly. What does that mean? Daniel hesitated again before finally saying, Daniel saw Olivia Bennett and Tyler Grant leaving a restaurant together. I responded quickly, almost defensively. So, friends can eat dinner together. Daniel's next words landed like a punch. They were holding hands. For a moment I couldn't speak at all. My mind struggled to process the sentence. Daniel must have misunderstood, I said quickly. That doesn't make sense. Daniel remained silent. Daniel? I pressed. His voice softened. Daniel wishes Daniel misunderstood. The air around me suddenly felt heavier. What exactly did Daniel see? I asked slowly. Daniel explained carefully. Daniel saw Olivia Bennett and Tyler Grant walk out of the restaurant together. Tyler Grant opened the car door for Olivia Bennett. Olivia Bennett laughed at something Tyler Grant said. Then Olivia Bennett grabbed Tyler Grant's hand. I shook my head even though he couldn't see me. That proves nothing, I said quickly. Mason, Daniel started. That proves nothing, I repeated firmly. Daniel's voice grew quieter. Daniel didn't want to call Mason about this. Then why did Daniel call? I asked. Because Mason deserves to know. I rubbed my forehead as tension built behind my eyes. Maybe Olivia Bennett just needed company, I said. Maybe Tyler Grant was cheering Olivia Bennett up. Daniel sighed softly through the phone. Mason, people don't hold hands like that unless something is going on. My stomach twisted. That doesn't sound like Olivia Bennett, I insisted. I know, Daniel replied. Daniel thought the same thing. I swallowed and asked another question. Did Olivia Bennett see Daniel? No. Did Tyler Grant? No. Then maybe Daniel misunderstood. Daniel hopes so, he said quietly. Neither of us spoke for a few seconds before Daniel said again, Mason? Daniel isn't trying to cause problems. I know. Daniel just thought Mason should hear it from family. I nodded slowly even though he couldn't see me. Thanks for telling Mason, I said quietly. Daniel responded gently, call Olivia Bennett. Just talk. I will. The call ended. For several seconds I stared at my phone as if the screen might somehow explain everything. Then I opened Olivia Bennett's contact and pressed call. The phone rang, and rang, but no one answered. I tried again. Ring. Ring. Still nothing. I stood up and began pacing outside the tent. Come on, I muttered under my breath before calling a third time. This time it went straight to voicemail. Marcus Hill stepped outside the tent and looked at me. Everything good? Marcus Hill asked. Yeah, I replied quickly. Marcus Hill raised an eyebrow. That didn't sound convincing. Just trying to reach Olivia Bennett. Olivia Bennett not answering? Not yet. Marcus Hill leaned against the tent wall. Maybe Olivia Bennett is sleeping, Marcus Hill suggested. Maybe, I replied, though something inside me didn't believe that explanation. I called again. And again. Still nothing. Marcus Hill watched quietly for a moment before speaking. Mason Carter looked stressed. Mason Carter is fine. Marcus Hill crossed his arms. Marcus Hill has seen that face before. What face? I asked. The face someone makes when something feels wrong. I didn't answer. A minute later my phone buzzed. A message from Olivia Bennett. I opened it immediately. Busy right now. Olivia Bennett will talk later. I stared at the screen silently. Marcus Hill glanced over. Good news? Olivia Bennett says Olivia Bennett is busy. Marcus Hill frowned slightly. At this hour? Probably work, I said quickly. Marcus Hill nodded slowly but didn't look convinced. You okay? Marcus Hill asked. Yeah, I replied automatically. Marcus Hill studied my expression carefully. Marcus Hill hopes that's true. After that Marcus Hill walked back inside the tent, leaving me alone under the cold night air. I looked down at the message again. Busy right now. No explanation. No apology. Just those words. I typed a reply. Call Mason Carter when Olivia Bennett can. The message delivered instantly but no response came back. Minutes passed. Then more minutes. The silence on my phone suddenly felt louder than the radios buzzing inside the communications tent. I leaned against the metal wall and closed my eyes as Daniel's words echoed in my mind. Daniel saw Olivia Bennett and Tyler Grant holding hands. That's impossible, I whispered into the night. Olivia Bennett loved Mason Carter. Olivia Bennett promised to wait. Olivia Bennett gave Mason Carter the silver dog tag. Slowly I pulled the necklace from my pocket and stared at it under the dim base light. Olivia Bennett wouldn't do that, I murmured to myself. But another quiet voice inside my head whispered back a question I couldn't ignore. Then why isn't Olivia Bennett calling back? I gripped the necklace tighter in my hand. For the first time since deployment began, doubt crept into my chest. And in that quiet moment something inside Mason Carter started to crack. Not suddenly, not loudly, but slowly, like glass beginning to fracture. Days passed after Daniel's call, and every one of those days felt heavier than the last. I kept staring at my phone during every break between missions, waiting for Olivia to call me back. The silence on my screen felt louder than the radios humming inside the communications tent. Late one night my phone finally buzzed and my chest tightened before I even looked at the screen. Olivia. I answered immediately. Hello. Her voice came through softly. Mason. Mason needs to relax. I frowned slightly. Relax. I repeated. Mason is overthinking everything, she said. I didn't hesitate. Daniel saw Olivia with Tyler. Silence filled the line. For a moment I thought the signal had dropped. Olivia? I said. Then she laughed lightly but the laugh sounded forced. Daniel probably misunderstood something, Olivia said quickly. Olivia and Tyler were just talking. I leaned forward slightly. Just talking? Yes. At a restaurant? Yes. And holding hands? Another pause followed. That part didn't happen, Olivia said quickly. My grip tightened around the phone. Why didn't Olivia tell Mason about dinner with Tyler? It didn't seem important. That doesn't sound right. It was just dinner, Olivia insisted. Tyler was helping Olivia with some things around the house. I frowned. What things? Just small stuff. That still doesn't explain why Olivia didn't mention dinner. Because Olivia didn't think Mason would react like this. React like what? Like Mason is doing right now. I took a slow breath and tried to steady my voice. Olivia. Mason just wants the truth. You have the truth. Then why does everything feel wrong? Because Mason is listening to Daniel too much. That's not fair. I'm just saying Daniel might have jumped to conclusions. Daniel doesn't usually do that. People make mistakes. The conversation felt like trying to walk through fog. Olivia, I said quietly, is there something Mason doesn't know? No, nothing at all? No, I closed my eyes slowly before asking the question that had been sitting heavily in my chest. Olivia, is Olivia cheating on Mason? No, Olivia replied immediately. The answer came too fast. Then why does Olivia sound nervous? I asked. I'm not nervous. Yes, Olivia is. Mason is imagining things. I'm not imagining anything. Then trust Olivia. I'm trying to. Then stop questioning every little thing. That's hard when Olivia keeps avoiding calls. I've been busy. With Tyler? That's not fair, Olivia snapped. Then explain. I already did. Silence filled the call again before Olivia finally sighed. Mason needs to calm down. Mason will calm down when things make sense. They do make sense. They don't. Olivia's voice softened slightly. Look, Olivia misses Mason. I miss Olivia too. Then stop turning this into something ugly. I'm not trying to. Then trust Olivia. I want to. Good. The conversation stalled again before Olivia spoke quietly. I should go. Already? It's late. Right? We'll talk later. Okay. The call ended. I stared at the dark phone screen for a long time, but nothing Olivia said actually made me feel better. If anything, the conversation made everything feel worse. I stepped outside the communications tent and leaned against the cold metal wall as the desert night air settled around me. A few minutes later, Marcus Hill stepped outside and looked at me carefully. Mason Carter looks like Mason Carter hasn't slept in a week, Marcus Hill said. I might not have, I admitted. Marcus Hill walked over and sat beside me on a crate. What happened? Olivia finally called. And? Marcus Hill asked. I shook my head slightly. I don't know. Marcus frowned. That doesn't sound good. Olivia says Daniel misunderstood everything. Marcus crossed his arms. Do you believe that? I want to. But something feels wrong. Marcus studied my face. Let Marcus guess, he said. Olivia gave vague answers. Pretty much. Marcus nodded slowly. Yeah, that's not great. I looked down at the ground. Olivia said dinner with Tyler wasn't important. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Dinner with another guy while Mason Carter is deployed definitely sounds important. That's what Mason Carter thought. Marcus rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Did Olivia admit holding hands? No. Did Olivia deny it? Sort of. That's not reassuring. I know. Marcus leaned forward slightly. Mason Carter asked if Olivia was cheating? Yes. And Olivia said no? Immediately. Marcus sighed quietly. Fast answers don't always mean honest answers. I nodded slowly. That's exactly what Mason Carter was thinking. Marcus stared toward the dark horizon for a moment. Man, Marcus Hill hates saying this. Saying what? I asked. Mason Carter needs proof. Proof? Yeah. Daniel already saw something. That's not enough. Why not? Because right now Mason Carter is stuck between two stories, Marcus explained. Daniel's and Olivia's. Exactly. I slowly pulled the silver dog tag necklace from my pocket and stared at it under the faint desert light. What if Marcus Hill is right? I asked quietly. About needing proof? No, I said softly. About Olivia lying. Marcus didn't answer right away. After a moment he finally spoke. Marcus Hill hopes Marcus Hill is wrong. So does Mason Carter, I replied. Marcus looked back at me seriously. But Mason Carter needs to be ready if Marcus Hill isn't. I nodded slowly, feeling a quiet weight settle in my chest. Deep down something inside me was already cracking. The trust that once felt unbreakable now felt fragile. And the worst part wasn't the doubt. The worst part was realizing I might already know the truth, and being terrified to face it. A week passed after the conversation with Olivia, and every day felt heavier than the last. I kept telling myself Marcus might be wrong and Daniel might have misunderstood something. I tried to focus on work, on radios, reports, and the constant buzz inside the communications tent, but my mind kept drifting back to the same question again and again. Then my phone buzzed. Daniel. I stepped outside the communications tent before answering. Hey. Daniel's voice sounded quieter than usual. Mason. Daniel is sorry. I frowned. For what? For what Daniel is about to send. My chest tightened slightly. What does that mean? Daniel just sent something, he said. Mason should look. Before I could ask anything else, the call ended. A message appeared on my screen. 3 photos. My chest tightened as I opened the first one. It showed Tyler's truck parked right outside my house. I stared at it for a few seconds. That could mean anything, I muttered under my breath, trying to calm the rising tension in my chest. Slowly I opened the second photo. My stomach dropped instantly. Olivia and Tyler were walking out of a bar together. Olivia was laughing at something Tyler said, and Tyler's hand rested casually on Olivia's back. My fingers began to shake as I stared at the screen. Please tell Mason that's not what Mason thinks, I whispered quietly. With a deep breath, I opened the third photo. Everything inside me froze. Olivia and Tyler were kissing. Right there on the sidewalk under the streetlights. I didn't even realize Marcus Hill had walked up beside me until he started speaking. "Hey, Mason Carter?" Marcus stopped mid-sentence as he noticed the phone in my hand. He leaned closer to look at the screen. "Is that?" Marcus asked slowly. "Yeah," I whispered. Marcus stared at the photo for a few seconds before exhaling quietly. "Damn." I couldn't speak. Marcus looked at me carefully. "Where did Mason Carter get those?" "Daniel," I replied. Marcus nodded slowly. "Mason Carter okay?" "No," I admitted honestly. Marcus didn't say anything else. I stared down at the photos again, my house, my fiancée, my best friend. Everything suddenly felt unreal, like I was looking at someone else's life. My chest felt tight and hollow at the same time. "I'm calling Olivia," I said quietly. Marcus nodded. "Yeah. Mason Carter should." My hands were still shaking as I pressed the call button. The phone rang once, twice, then Olivia answered. "Mason," Olivia said. My voice came out colder than I expected. "You lied to me." Silence filled the line. "Say something," I demanded. Olivia still didn't respond. "I saw the photos," I continued. "What photos?" Olivia asked quietly. I clenched my jaw. "Don't do that." Mason doesn't know what Olivia means. "The photos Daniel sent." Another long pause followed. "Olivia?" I said. Olivia exhaled slowly. "What exactly did Daniel send?" "Tyler's truck outside the house," I said. Silence. A photo of Olivia and Tyler leaving a bar. Still silence. And the photo of Olivia kissing Tyler. The words tasted bitter in my mouth. "Mason," Olivia whispered. I closed my eyes. "So it's true." "It's not what Mason thinks," Olivia said weakly. "Then explain it." Olivia didn't answer. "Explain it," I repeated. Finally she spoke quietly. "It just happened." My stomach twisted. "Just happened." "Yes." I let out a bitter breath. "That's the explanation?" Olivia hesitated. "Mason has been gone a long time." My voice hardened instantly. "That's not an excuse." "I'm not saying it is." "Then what are Olivia saying?" Olivia sighed quietly. "Mason doesn't understand how lonely everything feels." The word hit me harder than anything else she had said. "Lonely." "So Olivia cheated?" I asked slowly. "I didn't mean to," she replied softly. "That doesn't answer the question." Olivia's voice trembled slightly before she finally said it. "Yes." The word echoed in my ears. "Yes." For a moment it felt like the ground had disappeared beneath me. "How long?" I asked quietly. "Not long." "How long?" I repeated. "A few weeks." My chest tightened further. "And Tyler?" Olivia hesitated again. "Tyler was just there." I clenched my fist. "That's Mason Carter's best friend." "I know," Olivia whispered. "You know?" I said sharply. "I know this is horrible." I laughed bitterly. "Horrible doesn't even begin to describe it." Olivia's voice grew softer. "Mason. Mason is always gone." My jaw tightened. "So that makes this okay?" "No." "Then why did Olivia do it?" Olivia's answer came quietly. "I was lonely." That single word hit harder than everything else. Lonely. I let out a hollow laugh. Mason Carter is deployed in another country and Olivia Bennett feels lonely. "I'm not blaming Mason," she said quickly. "That's exactly what Olivia just did." "I didn't mean it like that." "Then explain it better." "I don't know how." "You could start with the truth." "I already told Mason the truth." "After getting caught," I replied. Olivia stayed silent. "Does Tyler know Olivia told Mason?" I asked. "No." "Does Tyler feel guilty?" "I think so." I let out another bitter laugh. "That's funny." "Mason," Olivia said softly. "What?" "I never wanted Mason to find out like this." My voice turned colder. "That's the part Olivia regrets?" "I regret everything." "But Olivia still did it." "Yes." Silence stretched between us again. Finally I spoke the words I never thought I would have to say. "Mason Carter trusted Olivia Bennett more than anyone." "I know," she whispered. "Mason Carter trusted Tyler Grant like a brother." "I know." "And both of them destroyed that." "I'm sorry." The apology sounded empty. I looked down at the photos again, Olivia laughing, Tyler leaning close, the kiss. "Lonely," I repeated quietly. "Yes," Olivia replied. That single word felt sharper than any knife. Because in that moment I realized something painful. Olivia didn't betray Mason Carter because Olivia stopped loving Mason Carter. Olivia betrayed Mason Carter because Olivia stopped respecting Mason Carter. And somehow, that realization hurt even more. Something inside me changed after that call. The pain didn't disappear and the anger didn't either, but both emotions hardened into something colder and quieter. Focus. For the first few days after Olivia's confession I kept staring at my phone as if it might somehow explain everything, replaying the same memories in my mind. Then one morning Marcus Hill looked at me from across the communications table and said, "Mason Carter looks like Mason Carter hasn't slept in a month." I barely looked up. "I'm fine," I replied. Marcus shook his head slowly. That answer usually means the opposite. I rubbed my eyes. "I'm just tired." Marcus leaned forward slightly. "Is Mason Carter still talking to Olivia Bennett?" "No, not at all." "No." Marcus studied my face for a moment before nodding. "Good." I looked at him in surprise. "Good?" "Yeah," Marcus said calmly. "Because chasing people who already made their choice never fixes anything." I didn't respond, but the words stayed with me. Marcus pointed toward the radio equipment on the table. "Right now Mason Carter has one job." I nodded slowly. "Deployment." "Exactly." I took a deep breath. "Then that's what Mason Carter will focus on." And that's exactly what I did. I stopped calling Olivia. I stopped waiting for messages. I stopped replaying the betrayal in my head every night. Instead I threw myself into work. I volunteered for extra shifts, studied communication protocols, helped coordinate missions, and started thinking about what my life would look like when I eventually returned home. One evening my phone buzzed again. "Daniel." I stepped outside the tent before answering. "Hey." Daniel's voice came through the phone cautiously. "Mason Carter doing all right?" "Better than last week," I replied honestly. Daniel hesitated for a second. "Daniel has an update." I exhaled slowly. "I figured." Daniel continued, "Tyler Grant and Olivia Bennett aren't hiding anything anymore." I frowned slightly. "What does that mean?" "They're going out together openly now." I waited for the anger to hit, but instead there was only a strange calm. "Okay," I said. Daniel sounded surprised. "That's it." "What reaction does Daniel expect?" I asked quietly. Daniel thought Mason Carter would be furious. Mason Carter already used up that energy. Daniel stayed quiet for a moment before saying, "There's more." "Go ahead." "Tyler Grant and Olivia Bennett argue a lot." I raised an eyebrow slightly. "Already?" "Neighbors heard shouting last night." I let out a dry breath. "That sounds healthy." Daniel sighed. "Tyler Grant's business is struggling too." "What happened?" "Several clients dropped Tyler Grant's construction contracts." "That's unfortunate," I replied calmly. Daniel chuckled softly. "Mason Carter sounds suspiciously calm." "Mason Carter is just listening." Daniel said. Daniel thought Mason Carter would want revenge. "No, none at all." "No." Daniel sounded genuinely confused. "Why not?" I leaned against the tent wall and answered honestly. "Because revenge keeps Mason Carter connected to both of them." "That's true," Daniel admitted. "Mason Carter doesn't want that connection anymore." Daniel stayed silent for a moment before saying quietly, "Daniel respects that." "Thanks," I replied. Before ending the call, Daniel added one more thing. "Oh, Olivia Bennett lost Olivia Bennett's job." I frowned slightly. "What?" "The real estate office fired Olivia Bennett last week." "Why?" "Late to work several times." I looked down at the ground while processing that information. "Did Olivia Bennett say anything about it?" "Daniel only heard the gossip," he replied. "Understood." Later that night Marcus Hill joined me outside again. "Marcus Hill has a question," Marcus said. "What question?" I asked. "Why does Mason Carter look calmer every day?" I shrugged slightly. "Mason Carter made a decision." "What decision?" "To move forward." Marcus leaned against the wall beside me. "So Mason Carter isn't going after Tyler Grant?" "No." "And Mason Carter isn't confronting Olivia Bennett again?" "No." Marcus crossed his arms thoughtfully. "That's impressive." "Why?" I asked. "Because most people would be planning revenge right now." I nodded slowly. Mason Carter thought about it. Marcus raised an eyebrow. And Mason Carter realized something. "What?" Marcus asked. I looked out toward the dark desert horizon. No amount of revenge would undo what happened. Marcus nodded slowly. That's true. So Mason Carter stopped wasting energy, I said quietly. Marcus studied my face carefully for a moment before speaking again. You know something interesting? What? Marcus Hill thinks karma is already working. I glanced at him. What do you mean? Tyler Grant's business failing, Marcus said. Daniel mentioned that. Olivia Bennett losing Olivia Bennett's job. Daniel mentioned that too. Marcus shrugged. Sometimes people create their own consequences. I looked out toward the distant horizon again. The desert night felt strangely peaceful. Marcus nudged my shoulder lightly. Marcus Hill still wants to know something. What? I asked. If Mason Carter isn't chasing revenge, what exactly is Mason Carter planning? I thought about that question for a moment before answering honestly. Mason Carter is planning a better life. Marcus smiled slightly. That sounds smart. I nodded. Marcus Hill approves. We sat there quietly for a few minutes until Marcus stood up and stretched. Marcus Hill is grabbing coffee. Good idea, I replied. Marcus walked back into the tent, leaving me alone under the dim base lights. A few seconds later my phone buzzed again. Another message from Daniel. Evelyn Bennett stopped speaking to Olivia Bennett. I stared at the message for a moment. Even Olivia's own mother was walking away. Slowly I slipped the phone back into my pocket and looked out toward the horizon again. A few weeks earlier that same horizon felt dark and endless. Now it felt different, like a direction. Marcus's words echoed in my head. Karma works quietly. I whispered to myself, Mason Carter isn't chasing karma. Because the truth was even simpler than that. Mason Carter was just walking away. And for the first time since the betrayal that felt like real freedom. 6 months later I finally stepped off the plane in Texas. The airport smelled like coffee, asphalt, and something strangely familiar that instantly reminded me of home. For a moment I just stood there holding my bag, letting the noise of the terminal wash over me. Mason. I turned and saw Daniel walking toward me quickly. Before I could say anything, Daniel pulled me into a tight hug. Welcome home, Daniel said. Good to be back, I replied. Daniel stepped back and studied my face carefully. Mason Carter okay? I will be, I answered honestly. Daniel nodded slowly. That's a better answer than Daniel expected. What did Daniel expect? I asked. Daniel expected anger. I shrugged slightly. Mason Carter already burned through that. We started walking toward the parking lot, our footsteps echoing through the terminal hallway. Daniel glanced sideways at me. Olivia Bennett tried contacting Mason Carter. I know. Several times. Mason Carter saw the messages. And? Daniel asked. Mason Carter didn't reply. Daniel opened the car door and leaned against it for a moment before getting in. Daniel respects that. Good. Daniel hesitated before adding, Tyler Grant isn't around anymore. I looked at him. What happened? Tyler Grant left town. For Olivia Bennett? Daniel shook his head slowly. For someone else. I let out a small breath. That sounds predictable. Daniel started the car. Olivia Bennett didn't handle that very well. I looked out the window as the car pulled out of the airport parking lot. That's not Mason Carter's problem. The drive home felt strangely quiet. Streetlights passed by in long glowing lines outside the window. After a few minutes Daniel spoke again. Does Mason Carter want to talk about it? No, Daniel nodded. Fair enough. A few days passed after that. I unpacked my bags, visited a few familiar places around town, and slowly tried to adjust to civilian life again. The house felt the same but I didn't. One evening, just as the sun was disappearing behind the trees, there was a knock on my door. I already knew who it was before I even opened it. I walked over and slowly pulled the door open. Olivia Bennett stood on the porch. Olivia looked different. The confident smile I remembered was gone, and dark circles framed her tired eyes. Mason, Olivia said softly. I crossed my arms slightly. What does Olivia Bennett want? She swallowed. I need to talk. I stepped aside silently and let her walk inside. Olivia moved slowly into the living room, looking around as if she expected everything to have changed. Everything looks the same, Olivia said quietly. Mason Carter doesn't, I replied. Olivia nodded without arguing. For a moment neither of us spoke. The silence between us felt thick but not uncomfortable for me anymore. Finally Olivia spoke again. Tyler Grant left. Mason Carter heard. Olivia looked down. Tyler Grant left Olivia Bennett for someone else. I shrugged slightly. That must feel familiar. Olivia flinched at the words. Olivia Bennett deserves that, she admitted quietly. Yes. Olivia stared down at the floor for a few seconds before speaking again. Mason. Olivia Bennett made a mistake. I shook my head slowly. No, Olivia looked confused. What? That wasn't a mistake. What does Mason Carter mean? She asked. I answered calmly. A mistake is forgetting milk at the store. Olivia swallowed hard. That was a choice. Tears began forming in her eyes. Olivia Bennett knows that now. Mason Carter knew it then. Olivia's voice dropped to a whisper. I was lonely. I shook my head again. That excuse didn't get better with time. Olivia Bennett isn't trying to excuse anything, she said quickly. Then why is Olivia Bennett here? I asked. Olivia looked up at me, her eyes full of desperation. Because Olivia Bennett still loves Mason Carter. The words landed in the room but didn't move me the way they once would have. That's unfortunate, I replied calmly. Mason, she began. I cut her off gently but firmly. Mason Carter spent months deployed overseas believing someone was waiting. Olivia nodded slowly. I know. But Olivia Bennett wasn't waiting. Her voice cracked. Olivia Bennett regrets everything. Regret usually appears after consequences, I said. Olivia wiped tears from her face. That's not fair. It's accurate. Olivia took a shaky breath. Can Mason Carter forgive Olivia Bennett? No, the answer came out immediately, calm and final. Olivia stared at me as if she didn't recognize the person standing in front of her anymore. You don't even have to think about it? She asked quietly. Mason Carter already did that thinking. During deployment? Yes. Olivia slowly sat down on the couch as if the weight of everything had finally settled on her shoulders. I lost everything, she said quietly. Mason Carter noticed. Tyler Grant left. Yes. Mom won't talk to Olivia Bennett. Mason Carter heard. Work fired Olivia Bennett. Mason Carter heard that too. Olivia looked up at me desperately. Doesn't Mason Carter feel anything hearing that? I paused for a moment and honestly considered the question before answering. No, the word hung in the air between us. Nothing? Olivia asked through tears. Nothing. Olivia began crying again. 6 months ago I would have walked toward her. 6 months ago I would have wrapped my arms around her and tried to fix everything. But the man standing in that room wasn't that version of Mason Carter anymore. You're really done, Olivia whispered. Yes. Completely? Yes. Olivia slowly stood up. I ruined everything, she said quietly. Yes. She looked like she wanted to say something else, but instead she just nodded. I hope Mason Carter finds happiness, Olivia said softly. I looked at her calmly. Mason Carter already started. Olivia walked to the door and paused with her hand on the handle. Goodbye, Mason. Goodbye, Olivia. The door closed softly behind her. I stood there for a moment staring at the empty room. The silence felt different now. Not painful. Not heavy. Just quiet. And for the first time since the betrayal, that quiet felt peaceful. Months later my life looked completely different. I stood in the empty living room of the house that once felt like my entire future. Cardboard boxes lined the walls, and the hollow echo in the room made the place feel bigger than it really was. Daniel leaned against the doorway watching me quietly. Hard to believe Mason Carter is really selling this place, Daniel said. I looked around the room one last time. Some memories belong in the past, I replied. Daniel nodded slowly. Mason Carter sure about this? Yes. Daniel picked up one of the boxes and lifted it easily. Where to next? Dallas. Daniel smiled slightly. New job, new city, new life. I nodded. That's the plan. A few weeks later I stood outside a tall office building in downtown Dallas, staring up at the glass windows reflecting the afternoon sun. My phone rang that morning. Marcus Hill. Marcus Hill heard Mason Carter finally escaped Texas suburb life. Marcus joked through the phone. I smiled slightly. Escaped is one way to describe it. How's Dallas? Marcus asked. Busy. Marcus laughed. That's good. Busy people don't have time to dwell on old problems. Mason Carter is figuring that out, I said. Marcus chuckled. Marcus Hill told Mason Carter things would get better. Marcus Hill was right. Work quickly filled my days. Meetings, projects, deadlines, and endless emails. Slowly the weight of the past stopped following me everywhere I went. One evening Daniel called again. Daniel needs Mason Carter at a hospital fundraiser tonight, Daniel said. I frowned slightly. A hospital fundraiser? Yes. Why? Because Daniel promised someone Mason Carter would show up. I narrowed my eyes even though he couldn't see me. That sounds suspicious. Daniel laughed. Just trust Daniel. Later that evening I walked into a large ballroom filled with warm lights and soft music. People stood around small tables talking quietly while servers carried trays of drinks through the room. Across the hall Daniel waved at me. There you are, Daniel said as I approached. Mason Carter still doesn't understand why Mason Carter is here. Daniel smiled knowingly. Daniel wants Mason Carter to meet someone. Before I could ask anything else, a woman walked over with a friendly smile. Daniel Carter must be talking about Mason Carter, she said. Daniel stepped aside. Mason Carter, meet Hannah Brooks. Then he added, Hannah Brooks works at the hospital. Hannah held out her hand. Nice to meet Mason Carter. I shook it. Nice to meet Hannah Brooks too. Hannah smiled warmly. Daniel Carter said Mason Carter is the quiet type. I laughed lightly. Only when life gives Mason Carter reasons to think. Hannah tilted her head slightly. That sounds mysterious. Just experience, I replied. Daniel looked between us with a grin. Daniel thinks Mason Carter and Hannah Brooks will get along fine. Hannah laughed. Daniel Carter always says that. Daniel raised his hands dramatically. Daniel Carter will leave the conversation here. Before I could stop him, Daniel walked away. Hannah looked amused. Daniel Carter does that a lot. Daniel Carter enjoys surprises, I said. Hannah picked up a glass of water from a nearby table. So what brought Mason Carter to Dallas? Fresh start. Hannah nodded. That's a good reason. I smiled slightly. And Hannah Brooks? Work mostly, she said. Hospital life must be busy. Very, Hannah replied. But helping people makes the long days worth it. I nodded slowly. That makes sense. For the first time in a long time, conversation felt simple again. No hidden tension, no painful memories rising between sentences, just two people talking naturally. Later that night as the fundraiser ended, Hannah walked beside me toward the exit. This was a nice evening, Hannah said. Mason Carter is glad Daniel forced Mason Carter to come. Hannah smiled softly. Maybe Daniel Carter knows what Daniel Carter is doing. I laughed. Sometimes. She hesitated before asking, will Mason Carter come to another event sometime? I nodded. Mason Carter would like that. Hannah gave a small wave before heading toward the parking lot. As I drove home through the quiet Dallas streets, something felt different. The past wasn't sitting in the passenger seat anymore. Weeks passed and life continued moving forward. Daniel occasionally called with updates from back home. One evening he said, Tyler Grant's business collapsed. I nodded slowly even though he couldn't see me. That's unfortunate. Daniel continued, Tyler Grant moved out of state. Probably for the best, I replied. Daniel hesitated before adding, Olivia Bennett tried contacting Mason Carter again. How many times? I asked. Several. I took a breath. Mason Carter didn't answer. Daniel paused for a moment. Daniel figured. I looked out the window at the quiet city lights. Mason Carter doesn't hate Olivia Bennett anymore. That's good, Daniel said. Mason Carter just doesn't feel anything. Daniel was silent for a moment before replying, that means Mason Carter finally healed. One evening I drove out to a quiet lake on the edge of the city. The water reflected the golden sunset while the breeze moved gently across its surface. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the silver dog tag necklace, the same one Olivia once gave me on that porch before I left for deployment. For a moment I just held it, remembering everything. The promise, the distance, the betrayal, the pain, and the long road back to myself. Then I walked to the edge of the water. This chapter ends here, I said quietly. I tossed the necklace into the lake. The metal disappeared beneath the surface with a soft splash, and the ripples spread slowly across the water before fading away. I watched the water grow still again and whispered to myself, Mason Carter survived. And for the first time since everything fell apart, I truly felt something new. Peace, not revenge, not regret, just peace. I turned away from the lake and started walking back toward the distant city lights. And finally, I moved on.